Hi guys, this is a very important topic we are going to discuss about the GraphQL. So we already discussed something about the API design, right? And why it is very much important. And here we are going to discuss about how we can use GraphQL for a API design at the API level. API लेवल पे आप GraphQL को कैसे यूज करेंगे और उसकी क्या एडवांटेजेस है. Actually, it is an alternative of your RPC and ROST. Maybe you can say REST as well as for SOAP. So GraphQL language is retrieve data from the server. It is an alternative of REST, SOAP, or the gRPC. Correct. We will see how we can use दिस कॉन्सेप्ट फॉर अ ग्राफक्यूएल, राइट. तो पहले हमको ये समझना है कि एक्चुअली कैसे काम करता है. करेक्ट. गुड थिंग इज दैट उसके एडवांटेजेस क्या है, राइट. मेजरली वी नीड टू वर्क इनटू अ टू steps. First, we need to define a GraphQL schema, and then we will see how you can implement a logic to fetch the data for a query. Correct. So first thing is that why GraphQL? Declarative data fetching. So, right, GraphQL allows client to request only a data they need, right? Right, enabling more efficient and tailored data fetching, right? So, it is basically allowing client to request only what data the client need. It is not required all each and every and all data you require. Unnecessary data we don't require. Correct. Unlike the traditional REST API, where REST point returns the fixed data structure. Let's say if you have defined one domain object, it has a 20, 30, 50 fields, all fields and data, you will get it, right? So here, basically, this reduces the overfetching of the data. So you will have a low, you can say load, and that response time will also getting increased. And then you are not fetching unnecessary data. Single endpoint for data queries. So GraphQL API is typically exposed as a single endpoint for all data queries. So in one single endpoint, you can get a different query and different data sets here, right? So it is also reducing your network overhead. Correct. So you will get a much more better performance, right? So in REST API, you need to define a different endpoints, right? For different actions and for different queries and whatever different, right? If you are say get all customers, get customers, if you are specifying some parameters, whatever it is like that, correct? So in this approach, flexible and efficient manner, reducing the need of multiple network requests. So you can also, what we can say, minimize your request which you are sending from client to the server side, right? So we have seen two things here, correct? Single endpoint. In that scenario, you will minimize the multiple calls, right? Another thing is that you will have data, whatever the client needs, not all the data, whatever server is sending everything, correct? So that is another advantage. Now, GraphQL is APIs are based on strongly typed schema. Provide a clear contract definition for enabling powerful tooling and documentation. So you will have a strong typed schema, right? First you define the schema and it is very strongly typed, correct? So structured of a API data graph, right? Including a types, queries, mutation, and subscription. So all these things, so the schema is strongly typed, meaning each field has a specific type, correct? Allowing for a compile time checks and improving a developer experience, basically, right? So additionally, tools like a GraphQL introspection for ID extension can leverage the schema. So idea is you will have a clear-cut defined schema, the types or different type of objects or different things, whatever you define the queries and you can say type and whatever. Generally, we define the domain object. So we define @ query, something like that. Here you can define as a type, right? You can, what is the particular method you are going to use it, fetch the data, you can define as a particularly queries like that. And there is also concept of mutation and subscription. So we will see that later here. So this is, we will understand how this schema will looks like. So in that scenario, you can come to our code here and you can see this will, you will see the schema. So you see the type and the query book by ID. You are passing on ID, right? And you will get the, you will say the book here, you will say ID string intent, then what is the type here, correct? So like this, you can understand it here. This is another object, something we called as an author. So this way you can create what we can call as schema here. correct? We will see how to create it, but first we need to understand the advantages, correct? So three things. First thing, the client defines that how many data they need it. Another thing is that you can minimize your network overhead, the number of requests here, tightly very strong, and you can have a batch queries with efficient data loading. So GraphQL support for batching multiple queries into a single request. So you can reduce the round trip time and improving the performance. So you don't need to send multiple requests again and again to get the different data set. In one request, you can get a multiple data set here. Correct. This is also very important. So it is also saving your time, and majorly you can improve the performance, right? At this layer when you are interacting your client to your server here. Correct. So this way you need to understand client can send a multiple request into a single GraphQL request here. Correct. But generally in REST APIs and RPC, it is not happening like this. You need to send a different data. You request for get the different data, or you can say different other details like this. Here it is not like that. So batching capabilities minimize the network latency and overhead compared to making individual requests for each piece of data. Correct. So this is very better performance, right? Here you can also understand the performance optimization for your entire what we can call as for development, and when we are talking about the API development. And it is a very important point when we are talking about the API development, right? Another thing is that GraphQL flexible nature also allows server to optimize the data fetching strategies such as a batch loading, caching, prefetching, and there are many such others performance optimization facilities GraphQL provides it. Correct. So this is another advantage here. Evolutionary API development, right? Facilities iterative API development allowing client to evolve their data requirement. So that is also another facility here, correct? So GraphQL client can request a new field or modify existing query without requiring changing to a server-side query. So this client can change that number of fields and data and everything, whatever they need it without what we can say changes into a server-side code or the API versioning or the API level. This is very important fact here. Correct. So request a new fields or maybe you can modify existing queries. So existing queries also you can modify here. This is very important point here. So there is a no such changes. आपके server side पे कुछ भी change नहीं होगा, right? Only you need to, this changes will be required at the client side. Correct. So it's a very flexible approach. Correct. Because when you have a different data sets, you are customizing a different data. All these things are very what we can say really improving the details here. Now, if we are talking about JSON based approach into REST API, it is giving some flexibility, but it is not giving as that much kind of a flexibility at the API level. Correct. So generally, whenever we define the contract as for API development in any particular what we can say language, maybe Node.js or Spring Boot or anything, you define that input output parameters, right? And what is the type of the parameters and everything. But here it is not required like this. Okay. So this way, these are the four different advantages. Now we'll see how you can create a simple Spring Boot application. So let's come back to here, and what we can do here, you can come to a Spring initializer. You can just say, add that three Spring Web, GraphQL, Spring for GraphQL, correct? And you can select for a Maven here, and then you can create GraphQL customer service or whatever name here, right? Maybe I am hitting as a, and what I am doing it here, right? And you can say generate. And this particular project we will import into our what we can call as in our Eclipse. Okay. So simple, it is a JDK 17 and everything we are using because these are we will going to use it. Right. Spring Web I have added additionally. Now coming back to Eclipse here. In Eclipse, what you need to do basically what you are going to do it, you can import it, right? So new, and you can say import the project, existing Maven project, and you can import it, correct? So you can browse that project here. I have done it from my E space, and you can select like this and select and import it. So once you import it, you can finish it, right? So you will get that your GraphQL project here in your, so I have already created. First thing is in your SRC main resource, you will look like a folder is for GraphQL here. Here you need to create one file, something called as a schema.graphql. So you can call as schema.graphql. This is already there, but this way you can write that file here, and over there we can define that there is a query, right? So we have discussed that there is a particular type as a query here, and type is nothing but is kind of what we can call as the different objects, domain objects which we are specifying, that is also be defined into a schema here. So book is another type of what we can call as the domain object, right? So we will create, there is a something called as a new class called as a book here. Okay. So once you will create is for book like this, you can specify, let's say if I will write as a customer. Okay. Right. So you can create a one class called as a customer here, right? And is this customer class, what will happen here? So this particular customer class here, you can also define this customer class also into your GraphQL schema, right? And this customer class, you can have a, let's say, private in ID, private string name, correct? Here you can say private string email. Okay. Now what is happening here? You can generate a setter getters, correct? So source generator setter getters. Okay. Right. So I do some hard coding here. And what I can say, I will, what I can do is for private, sorry, public, right here, what I can call as customer, right? Get customer by ID. Okay. Now you can write it something what we can call as if you wanted to write into a, some other place or something like this, you can do it, right? Let's say if you are writing into some other service class or something, you can do it. Okay. So in this customer, I will create that one of the what we can say the list of customers, right? And here you can say new array list and what we can call as customer. Okay. So what we are doing it, we will just do some hard coding into this list here, and we are just trying to get it. Okay. First list. So this customer ID here, what we will say, we will pass that int ID. Okay. And you can basically customer list. Here we will add that one more, what we can call as something, one of that constructor, right? So in the constructor, you can say int id, string name, the way we basically define string email. Okay, this dot id is equal to id, this dot name is equal to name, this dot email is equal to email. Okay, like this, correct? So this way you can understand you have written it. Now what we do, we write customer list is equal to dot add, right, new customer, correct? Here we will say to, comma, what we can call as James, comma, James at the rate Gmail. Okay. In the same way, here you can also take it as for. Now what you will do, so I will also, this also I will take it as a, what we can say as of now, for one and Roderick, Roderick, right? So we have added two particular customers here, what they are saying. So you need to change that, this integer, rather than I will make it as a string as a. Okay. Here is also string, string, string. Okay. Now we will say return statement. So return, what we will say, right? Dot stream dot filter, right? So what we can say, c dot get id dot equals, right? Here we will say string id, right? Dot, so what you need to do, so we will write something what we can call as like this. So customer, like this, you can write like that, right? And you can just say One customer. Okay. So we will get that particular customer. It is nothing but simple stream API here, right? So any ID which we are passing it, if you are passing two, we will get this. If you are passing one, this will get this, correct? So if you wanted to add, I have already created two schema here. So basically I have created called as a book and author. And this book has a sub tab as an author here, correct? So I have already created just like your customer. There is a something we called as book. In this book, we have that ID, name, page count, and author here. And we have one of the what we can say define that what we can call as one of that array list with the book object. And we have written that get by ID, and this get by ID is taking as an ID and returning as a book. So this get by ID basically returning as a book here, and here we are passing author ID as an author here, correct? So if you are using the same, so how whenever we call this get by ID, it is basically passing the ID and we are filtering or maybe getting the data from this array list, and we are matching that if which book ID is matching with this book ID. If I will passing book one, you will check into from the book one and you will get it. Okay, like this. So whenever we are passing book one, this particular new book, this data will be written. If I am passing book two, this data will be written. Book three, this data will be written. Correct? Simple. So these two methods, it is nothing related to your GraphQL, but it is just a simple data. You can fetch this data from your database using the repository and all this. That is, you can do it. Correct. So this is we have hard coded the data here. This data we are trying to fetch it and giving it to a API table. So in the controller. So in the same way we have there is a author. In this author, you will have a something author name, first name, last name. And here also we have created a list. Whenever we pass that any author ID, we will get it. So author is get by ID, correct? So like this, okay? And we have one particularly a controller. In this controller, this is very important. So we have there is a query mapping, and this query mapping, just like we have a request param, we have defined that request param here or path variable into an Springboot. Here we have created a one of that type is an string as nothing but your argument. Correct. This based on this argument, we will fetch it. So here we are getting book that get element by ID. So get element by ID, where we have it? We have it into a this get element by ID, from where we will get this data from this list, which is we have a hard coded here. So like this, normally if you are developing a service and repository, you can call to your service from service to repository and you can get the data. Simple. The idea at API level, there will not be change. So basically here we are using a REST controller and controller request mapping in all these places. Here we are using a directly what we can call as this query mapping, and this is a schema mapping here, correct? So author, if you will pass any book, you can get by ID. With the help of this book ID, you can get the author here, correct? So this schema mapping also we required basically when we need it, particularly author in this book here. So basically in the book, when we are fetching the book, book has also a child as an author here, correct? So in this book, here there is a author. Correct. So this author we also need to fetch it, right? So this author will be fetched with the help of what we can call as with the help of schema mapping. So whenever we are passing the book ID, we will get all the authors, right? Like this. Okay. So in this, what we can call as particularly author ID, right? So whenever we pass the author ID, you can get that book details. So if you will come and see in your book, you have a book ID, you have a book name, you have a page count and the author ID. When we pass this author ID, you can get that complete details of an author, correct? So it's like what we can call as one to many relationship, right? So one author has written a multiple books. So in that scenario, we have written a GraphQL schema in that you see book and author, and we have defined that author here, correct? Now we have only a book by ID. So we have a specified book, and the return type is the book here. So this book by ID is nothing but we have given that query controller here, book by ID, the argument is ID, and it is returning as a book. So this is the basically our query, and this query we have defined also into our GraphQL schema, correct? Like this. So this is you need to understand anything. If you are adding any query, you need to define here, and then you can process it, correct? So now GraphQL also providing a what we can call as there is a UI interface to test it. So we have added Spring GraphQL dot enabled as a true. So we will use that proper interface to send and test the request just like your Postman. I am running into 80998940. Correct. We have added a customer. This customer data also how to test and how to use it. I will just give a demonstration here. So I will just run it first. So we have created a two hard-coded book list and author list here, right? And we have defined one of the schema and one of that controller. We have defined that query, correct? So this server has started here. Now let's go to our page and you can see how we can test it, right? So in that scenario, how to test this GraphQL? So localhost 8089, right? And you can say slash GraphQL, correct? So you will see this is the sample query, book details, and we are just passing is for book by ID. ID is nothing but, and whatever data we need it, that is you can specify here. So this query name, so this query name is you can give it any other query name, whatever query name you wanted to give. Let's say, so let me first, so majorly it is important that what is the parameter we are passing for getting the book here. So this book by ID, nothing but you have defined the query, right? This query, you will have all the details here. So you can send it. So you will see if we are passing a book 3 related to ID, name and a page count, and this is the author for the book 3. So you can come and see, correct? Whatever you come to your book 3. So book 3 has a down under the name of the book and the author 3 here, 436 author 3. And author 3 is, who is the author 3 here? Author 3 is nothing but Bill Bryson, right? So this way you can see the data, you can verify and manage it, right? Bill Bryson here down under. So if I don't want, there are some of the fields you can control C and you can remove it, right? And you can say, I need only this much data, right? So like this, you can also define that what is the particular, if you need only a first name only, you can say only a just first name. I don't need, you don't need all these data. Some selected fields you need it. If you will say book 2, you can also say a book 2. So book 2 details. Can you just change the query details here? Query details new. Will it work? It will work, correct? If you will say book 1, you can say a book 1 like this. If I don't need the name here, you can also say I don't need the name. So name will. So this is the power. You can control at the client side what the data you need it, correct? Like this. So this way you can write and you can use it. Now coming back to our particularly a customer, right? So I will add one more controller here, right? So I hope you got the point how you can write or you can say the complete understanding of a GraphQL, why GraphQL, why you are using it, why, how to use it. So you can just quickly add that one more controller, or maybe rather than book in the book controller also, I am writing it one more query, correct? So what you will do, you will say here, right? Book by ID, nothing but we will say customer by ID. Okay? And it will return what? customer, correct? Argument is ID. Here you can say a customer dot. So here just wanted to, because we need to make it as a customer, but ID is for static here. Okay. So that we can use it, book controller. Here you can say dot get customer by ID. Okay. Like this. Okay. So it will return the customer. Now, as of now, we have added a one more query here. This query we need to add it here, right? So what you can say, you can need to come to a controller. This customer by ID, we need to define into a GraphQL schema. Simple way, यहाँ पर कुछ ज़्यादा effort लेना नहीं है हमें, right? Here you can specify the ID column ID and it will be type of customer. अब ये कस्टमर का कोई टाइप तो अभी है नहीं यहाँ पर, राइट? सो यू आल्सो नीड टू डिफाइन द टाइप ऑफ कस्टमर हियर, करेक्ट? सो टाइप customer, correct? And you can define that particularly type here. So what is the type here? ID, right? ID, right? You have a name, column, string, correct? You have an email, column, string, correct? So like this, you can define all these objects and query. You have defined that customer by ID, right? This customer by ID is nothing but you have created one of that query here, like this. Okay. And here you will have a simple, correct? And we have added one query. You have added one type. Okay. Name, email, and name, email. So is this name, email, and ID same? You can check into a customer.java. So we have a name, email, and ID. Okay. Like this. Now I will stop it and I will again run it. Correct. So simple. So this data also we are fetching it. You can fetch it from, you can hard code, you can return whatever things you wanted to do, you can do it. Correct. Idea is at API level, how you are handling it. So there is a GraphQL is saying in schema customer by ID. Invalid syntax, right? 8 line number 3. So I guess there is some syntax issue here. So we need to come to a schema. Okay, 8 line number 3. So we need to define here. Now again, it is saying query. So we need to say it, there is some more problems. Failed to parse the file for. Abhi bhi, there is some error here. Okay. So try to redefine. Okay. So there is one thing we need to understand, I guess. Trying to redefine this query. Now, 1 minute. Correct. So guys, you can just basically just fix the error. Basically, we have missed out this semicolon here. So idea is you should not define a too many type queries here. You can have a multiple queries. You can put it into this single query block here. So we have added a customer by ID. This customer by ID we have added into this controller here. Controller, you can also create actually a different controller here. Ideally, you should create a different controller, not a book controller, as a customer controller here. Okay. So whenever we are passing the ID, according to that customer details, we are returning and we are fetching the data here. Correct. So we have defined that particularly what we can call as यहाँ पर हमने customer by ID डिफाइन किया इसका रिटर्न टाइप कस्टमर है और हमने ये कस्टमर का टाइप डिफाइन किया जिसका आईडी टाइप है नेम स्ट्रिंग टाइप है ईमेल। यहाँ पर दूसरे अलग टाइप के भी डेटा टाइप्स हैं जिसमें आप इंट को भी यूज कर सकते हो। यदि कस्टम डेटा टाइप्स है तो लाइक दिस यू कैन स्पेसिफाई, राइट। यदि आपने ऑलरेडी वो टाइप डिफाइन किया है तो यू कैन आल्सो डिफाइन लाइक दैट, जो हमने बुक वाले एग्जांपल में दिखाया। करेक्ट, वी हैव सीन। नाउ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट फेचिंग दिस कस्टमर डिटेल्स। So we have already added here in this customer, or this particular get customer by ID will return the customer which is matching with the ID. जो भी ID we are matching it, that particular customer we are returning it. Correct. So in that scenario, we have run it, and then now we will go to our GraphQL. So again, we will run that GraphQL here, localhost 8089 / GraphQL. Right. So this customer by ID, we are calling it. You can give any name as we have discussed that something like that. You can give it customer by ID. ID is one, and this ID and name. So these two parameter as of now we need it. Correct. So you will see the ID is Roderick. ID is one. So how you are getting it? This one you are getting if we pass that customer ID is one, name is a Roderick. This is we are trying to fetch it. So we haven't requested email as of now. राइट, अभी हमने ईमेल के का पैरामीटर वहां पे डिफाइन नहीं किया है। बट यदि यहाँ पर आप ईमेल को भी यदि डिफाइन करोगे तो वहां पर आपको ईमेल भी मिले, ईमेल। ठीक है। सो यू सी रोड्रिक का ईमेल भी आ गया है। द पासिंग द पैरामीटर इज सेकेंड। नाउ यू कैन ऑल्सो से लाइक दिस। सो दिस वे इज बेसिकली यू कैन कस्टमाइज द फील्ड, यू कैन ऐड सम एडिशनल डिटेल्स। हमने एक ऑब्जेक्ट बनाया है, डेटा हमने फेच किया हुआ है। करेक्ट। Now we have done the hard coded data, but if you really wanted to do from this controller, basically you need to auto wire one of the service, and this service will basically call to repository and you will fetch the data. Correct. So ideally what you will do, you will create a one more service here, something we called as a customer service, and customer service we call the repository and you will get the data. And this way we follow the traditional way into a Spring REST API. The same way you can just call controller, from controller to service to repository. As of now, we have done the hard coding. That's why we are using it. Now later we will learn about the mutation, and also there are two more types, right? And also we will see how we can run the multiple queries into a single request, right? That is also we will see little later into a deep. So you can still follow us and subscribe our channel. We will share the details again. Thank you very much.